What a pleasure to be here sharing with you this side event at World Conservation Congress. It's my privilege to be able to be with you, at least remotely. I was not able to make the trip, but I think you will have a great time there. Thank you again. So I will be talking to you about conservation finance innovation for private lands, conservation and regenerative ranching in northern Mexico. I've been working all my life for conservation, and when I say all my life, my professional life, almost 40 years, I was part of the founding teams of several important environmental funds and also the network of environmental funds of Latin America and the Caribbean. And now in my retirement, I have decided I want to give one extra effort and do conservation of private lands and do regenerative ranching in northern Mexico. I love these landscapes. You can see it's open spaces, it's grasslands. It's an amazing geography, and it's also a geography that is threatened by development and human activities. I have created a new institution. I have incorporated a new civil society organization, Terra, and through this one, we do innovative conservation finance through several programs. Two of them I will be describing today are regenerative ranching, that has to do with harnessing the economic power and the will of ranchers in northern Mexico, and also private lands conservation clusters, which works with private owners that one way or another are committed to conservation. So I will be talking about these two modes of work that we are experimenting and how they leverage conservation finance at scale. In terms of regenerative ranching, Mexico produces a significant amount of meat through different kinds of ranching. The one we will be referring through this talk is the ranching that is done in open spaces, the large ranches, very different from many industrial ranching activities that happen in other parts of the states and other countries of the world, but it will be ranching we will be focusing. So ranching in large ranches that go from 10,000 to 20,000, 30,000 acres in northern Mexico. And to understand why this is an opportunity, we should be looking at northern Mexico and how it has a significant network of protected areas marked here in dark green, light green, and yellow, federal, state, and municipal, as well as these polygons that show grasslands priority conservation areas that we share with the US and Canada and make a long corridor towards Canada. So at the same time in this region, we have an important percentage of land being held by private owners. So that means that negotiating and doing deals is relatively easier because you are doing bigger deals at the time. So in blue, we have the percentage of land owned by ranchers. We estimate we have around 3,000 ranches in this region. And excuse me, we have around 300 committed and interested ranchers in this region, and we have a potential of between 2 and 3 million acres and of conservation potential in the first place. So how does our model work? It works by working a first step of planning and technical assistance with the owners of the ranches. We help them secure commercial financing to do the basic investments they need to change the way they do ranching from a traditional model to a regenerative model that I will explain in a few minutes. And then we do on land or person-to-person capacity building for them to reach these new tools will enable them to have a much better operation. We have a model where the owners and the people that work there win because they have more revenue, more resilient communities. The land wins because it improves biodiversity and the environmental services. And of course, something very important nowadays, and particularly for this region, we have an improved water and carbon cycle. And of course, less land degradation, conserving the soil is paramount here. And this model basically resembles the symbiotic relation that has been here for hundreds of years or for thousands of years between the large herds of bison and the natural grasslands in the region. So basically, we are replicating at a smaller scale the bison migration with these ranches, and that's the whole trick. And for doing that, we definitely need to work very closely with the ranchers. A ranch that has been degraded over centuries, something that was a grassland, looks something like this, and very poor conditions for ranching, very little grass, mostly shrubs. And we have also big industrial agriculture in the region that, of course, has a huge impact in the water table. They consume large amounts of water, and this eventually impoverishes the land and it makes much more expensive to reach water that goes deeper and deeper. So the solution, regenerative ranching, basically transforms lands that were degraded and over a period of 5, 6, 7 years, if done right, restores land to its perennial grass diversity, habitat for migratory birds, and at the same time, a very productive land that enables cattle to grow faster and a much better health. And this, in the medium term, means a much better business for everybody. So our dream is that most of the ranches that were degraded can be restored to its natural prairie condition, and eventually will look like this. By the way, this is a ranch, one of our model ranches by the Osuna Schneider family, and it's a good example of a very productive ranch. Here, as you know, we have, as you can see, we have a multi-part sector partnerships. We do extensioning, we do agreements with them, we do management plans. Each ranch is different, so each ranch needs a different management plan. We do monitoring, and we foster the communication among everybody. So we create learning communities where knowledge is being increased on a year-to-year basis. We do evaluate impact in our regenerative ranching program, and we do it on several fronts: environmental, production, and social or model conditions. And here we have some examples of how we monitor those, but basically the most important part is that we get indicator species back, and we have a much better hydrological cycle that brings life to the land. Another approach we're doing with other owners that not necessarily are doing ranching, but do limited ranching and own large tracts of wildlands in northern Mexico, northern Coahuila, is that we do conservation clusters. And here I want to talk a bit about the successful experience in the Cuenca Los Ojos ranches. This is what I call Valer's dream, a visionary woman, a very good friend, an amazing person, that had this dream of restoring the lands in Arizona and northern Sonora, which she did. She started with a ranch in Arizona, and then later she started buying properties in Mexico and doing riparian corridor restoration and doing wetlands conservation and doing all kinds of interesting stuff. And we were able to help her at the end with her dream and put together a very attractive model of wildlands conservation clusters where one or more landowners do put together a land management unit, get a partnership with a financing unit, and establish a commercial, establish a land trust within a commercial financial institution, and then you have protection in perpetuity. This project called Cuenca Los Ojos is now in operation. It is well funded, and it has very capable people working on this land, which represents plus 120,000 plus acres in all. We were so successful with this that we are now planning to replicate this in another region. That was Sonora. Now we go to Coahuila, and we want to replicate this in the state of Coahuila, northern Coahuila, with the Serranía del Burro and Maderas del Carmen cluster. We have here 7 owners or 7 new titles as a case for private lands conservation. It's a larger polygon. It's 250,000 acres. And here we will be putting together a new scheme, which is a scheme where through a company called Cultivo Land, BCP, they have the model of Cultivo Nature Generator. We will be bringing financial benefit to the owners from land regeneration. And so we will be able to restore this large cluster that is interconnected and is also the black bear capital of Mexico and has a huge potential as a binational wildlife corridor. So this is now the turn for Serranía del Burro. Eventually we'll get to other clusters, and we hope to replicate all this at scale. I'm closing with this thought about leveraging scarce financial resources for conservation. In the case of regenerative ranching, the regenerative ranching model, as I said, we have the potential of 1 million hectares, approximately 2.5 million acres in northern Mexico, through this group of committed ranchers. We know that in these projects, a seed capital investment can, of let's say $100,000, generates impact, conservation impact at the 20,000 acre scale in perpetuity. So that's a very good deal for someone investing money. And this money invested can be through the traditional development finance or commercial banking, or through capital investment through special purpose vehicles. The figure to remember is that a $5 per acre one-time investment can reap long-term conservation benefits. And this is conservation finance innovation at scale. The private land conservation clusters, and I'm using here figures from the Sonora example, it has leveraged an investment of an institution, a conservation institution of roughly $750,000 into a $35.4 million conservation impact project. That doesn't mean that money was transferred from one institution to the other. It means that this smart investment has brought a large value in dollars into conservation through landowners' properties and through endowments and through investments done into the project. This is it's probably the largest leverage I've ever seen, 47-to-1, and we are very happy that it is replicable in other states of Coahuila and Chihuahua in northern Mexico. Of course, we cannot do this by ourselves. We are partnering with great leaders, great institutions like Cultivo Land, like Wild Network, like Biophilia Foundation, like Rainmaker Trust, like Pronatura Noreste and Profauna. All of these are our partners, and many more hopefully to come. And through this, we will be able to innovate conservation at a scale that is meaningful, that is right for northern Mexico. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rosario Alvarez. I'm an environmentalist from Mexico, and today we'll be talking to all of you regarding sustainable finance for one of the most valuable resources, that is water. So if you bear with me, I will talk about a couple of examples that are happening right now in Latin America. Just as a frame for our conversation, a couple of facts regarding water. More than 900 million people in the world lack safe drinking water. 2/3, 1 in every 3 people lack adequate sanitation. And according to the World Health Organization, water and sewage systems basically are not available to everybody. And we all know that if sanitation and access to water was available to everybody, we could prevent around 2.2 million deaths of children every single year. So now with this huge problem, cities and others are starting to look at different solutions for water access and sanitation, more into the green infrastructure type of solutions rather than investment in treatment plants and pipes to get water to everybody. One of those solutions I'm going to talk to you about is the water funds. They basically emerge as a partnership of the Nature Conservancy, the Inter-American Development Bank, and a Mexican foundation, Fundación FEMSA, as a long-term protection of basins and sources of water for urban populations. They are basically financial mechanisms that help water security in one specific basin. Water funds, they're designed to answer 4 key questions regarding water. One is, what are you wanting to protect? What is the environmental or the ecosystem service that you want to prioritize? The second one is, where is that service located? What is the area of influence of that specific ecosystem services? The third question is, who's using that service? What is the major user of that service? And then how much does it cost to maintain that service for the long term, and transfer that service into economic value. So once you have that economic value, then you establish a fund. And this fund, or the water fund, is mostly hosted in a nonprofit organization, and the work of that nonprofit is basically create the necessary dialogue among different sectors, public, private, and civil society. One interesting thing about water funds, they're based on scientific information that tells you how much of the service, who's using it, and how much does it cost. And you will attract, with the water funds, capital contributions from the large water users. That can be hydroelectric companies, irrigation districts, agriculture associations, or whomever. And then you create this fund that mostly it's a private fund who keeps all those resources, and year after year is investing in the watershed to maintain that ecosystem service that is so valuable. And right now there are 25 water funds in Latin America. 4 of them are in Mexico. One of them is located in Monterrey, that's my hometown. It's called FAM. Monterrey is a big city. It's about 5.3 million people. It has the highest migration from rural to urban areas in all of the country. And the metropolitan area of Monterrey is about 9 municipalities and has around 1.1 million outlets of domestic and industrial water outlets. Fondo Ambiental Metropolitano Monterrey, the FAM, right now has around 40 different partners and has brought together resources from the private, the multinational agencies, and also the public, the state government. The investments are directed specifically in the upper basin, and the work is done through local NGOs like Pro Natura Noreste and others. And the actions are very specific, include reforestation, land protection, soil conservation, payment of ecosystem services. And right now, the Fondo Ambiental Metropolitano Monterrey has invested around more than $9 million and is structured, as I mentioned before, as a private environmental fund. So FAM not only has done this, it also has created or participated in new and very interesting models that I'm going to talk about. This second very innovative model where FAM has partnered with Terra Habitus, another environmental fund, and Pro Natura Noreste as a local partner in the regeneration of more than 1,000 square kilometers of a basin the Santa Catarina Basin that basically traverses, and the river, that's the Santa Catarina you can see in this image, that traverses the city. So the objectives, as I mentioned, is the regeneration of the subbasin, investment in essential infrastructure needed up in the basin to protect from peaks, and also to invest in green infrastructure in this riparian corridor that you can see right now, starting with a pilot project of 60 hectares. So this will include civic spaces, green areas, recreation, and natural reserves. Imagine this is our Central Park if we were New York, but we're Monterrey, and this is our Rio Santa Catarina. So the financial mechanism of RIO CIUDAD, that's the name of the project, includes an investment of $425 million. The initial funding is coming from the private sector, who's leveraging public and multinational funds, and also very interested in including civil citizen participation through campaigns, crowdfunding, and potentially maybe a surcharge on the water bill. So this, what we want to do with our project RIO CIUDAD, is make sure that we have a city where our citizens value and participate in the conservation and the use of the green infrastructure. What I presented to you right now, for me, it's I'm really proud because we're using financial mechanisms to value one of our most important rights as a human being, is the access to water and the ability to use water in a sustainable way. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed those two examples.
Listo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hi, I am Adriana Maria Martinez, and I'm very happy to be here. What a privilege. I want to thank the organizers and colleagues who thought of me and included me in this panel. This is a panel on innovation in conservation and finance, so I will talk to you about conservation, finance, and art. Art and conservation go hand in hand. Nature, it is not only the foundation of our existence, the ecosystems that give us food, shelter, and water, but it is also the source of inspiration for all forms of art that exist. In fact, nature is the greatest work of art that we can experience as humans. This is why it is so easy to raise consciousness through art. Let me tell you a little bit about myself, my career, and how I got involved in art. I like to think that it was meant to be. It is in my genes. My great-grandfather was a Belgian cultural attaché in Mexico, and my grandparents of my mother's side were protagonists of one of Mexico's most exciting moments in the 20th century. I grew up in the 80s and 90s with extraordinary combination of art studies, social conversations, music, book presentations, gymnastics, between the vibrant Mexico City and my father's hacienda on the Yucatan Peninsula, surrounded by lush nature of incredible beauty. My father, who was a medical doctor, founded an exemplary public hospital in Mexico City during the 1970s. Living through all of this shaped me. The sense of service was one of the most important components of my education. I started working at 16, opened my first company at 22, moved to New York at 26, became involved in philanthropy at 29, and combined it all with the creation of Mycelium at 32. Around the time I moved to New York, I started gravitating to new ways of thinking, new paradigms, new approaches to doing things, and I discovered basically that life offers unlimited possibilities. Without knowing it, I created a program that embraces 5 capitals: natural, human, social, spiritual, and financial. Since then, I have been exploring opportunities to bring these ideas to a concrete project. Now, let's talk about Mycelium Initiative. The name is no coincidence, as the mycelium is the web that sustains and connects life in nature, in the soil. It is because of this inspiration that we intend to transform the world through art. Mycelium is in nature a network of unlimited resources that nourishes the earth. We aspire to nourish the human consciousness through art. Mycelium debuted as a cultural platform and art gallery in 2011. in the form of world-class exhibition space for contemporary art. We have presented our art exhibitions in urban centers, tropical forests, coastal environments, and also on the ground in mystical cenotes and caves. We engage with local artists, communities, landowners, custodians, and collaborate with municipal, state, and federal governments, providing important interventions in nature and public scene. We have alliances with institutions and individuals who share our vision of a better world through cross-cultural exchanges and collaborative partnerships. All aspects of our business model are designed, oriented to support and foster local culture and economy by introducing inspiration through art and regenerative business perspective, sharing our knowledge and experience and mentoring our local partners. We sponsor artistic projects that are transformative and inspiring. We work with a global network of recognized artists who have a track record of creating art that inspires positive change. Here are a few examples. Aldo Chaparro, in our wonderful pilot in Tulum, Taka Fernandez, and his project EFCA, Active Contemplation Floating Station. Jan Hendricks with his extraordinary show at Kew Gardens and his reef sculpture at Espiritu Santo in 2012. He is ready to come back with us for a second intervention. Tania Candiani, who represented Mexico at the Venice Biennale. Our plans for the future consider engaging artists that lead this new frontier between art, conservation, and communication. Artists such as Patricio Robles Gil, The Rituals of Extension, and Fluvio Cardi, Valor de Origen, as well as many other talented photographers, sculptors, painters, musicians that tap into nature for their inspiration. Our proposal is to explore the regenerative economy, building reciprocity from 5 capitals: natural, human, social, spiritual, and financial. Financial through art sales, creating and directing finance resources. Spiritual through art residencies, inspiring donations and philanthropy. Human through art interventions in nature, remembering we are all nature. Social with art walks, art workshops, and talks, engaging the community for sustainable habits of transformation. And natural, art and nature immersions, creating awareness of conservation of nature. Mycelium sees Baja California Sur as a first destination for sponsoring site-specific artwork, aligned in concert with the incredible landscapes and biodiversity of Baja California Peninsula. The first program will include a select group of artists that will contribute to the well-being and cultural heritage of Baja California Sur. During residencies, artists will highlight conservation needs and efforts and draw international attention to this beautiful and fragile environment. Social media will reinforce the we all are nature message and will elevate the profile of environmental challenges and concerns. A second program that moves art out of the museum and directly into nature, transform a beautiful landscape into an art gallery, where patrons begin to understand the joy that art can bring into our daily lives and share it with other stakeholders. Nature-based art will be combined with other perspectives to reinforce the message and call to action for sustainable consumption and responsible living. The third program, Collectors with a Cause. Having a local mycelium gallery will use art transaction, commissions, and fees as a source of funding for unique, meaningful, and impact-driven marine terrestrial conservation projects, promoted or managed by Mexican conservation organizations, such as ROC, Red de Observadores Ciudadanos, based in La Paz, Baja California Sur, MAR Fund, a regional trust fund for conservation in Mesoamerican reef, and Terra Habitus, focused in private land conservation and regenerative ranching, and farming in northern Mexico. Through our philanthropical and cultural influence, we will advance awareness that translates in environmental economic policy that protects natural and cultural values in the region, connecting influential leaders of all sectors through our networks. We engage in transdisciplinary solutions to conservation and social development challenges that itself are complex and diverse. Looking forward to building a more consciousness future together. Thank you. Listo.